G'day everyone. For today's vlog, I am going to be walking you through GMing Fragged Aeternum. So firstly, I might read the back of the book blurb. That will give something a little bit better than me ad-libbing. Okay. You are an immortal tethered, a powerful warrior in the endless city of Aeternum. Aeternum. The Eternal City is a place of strife and mystery. It is a metropolis that spans the entirety of known existence. Its buildings, parks, and streets stretch from horizon to horizon without end. Within Aeternum, the souls of the dead do not lie still. When a human dies, their soul will rise from their body as a green ghost of their former self. After the briefest pause, that soul will either ascend into the sky or crawl down beneath the ground. The people of the infinite city live their lives under the shadow of a disturbing revelation. The vast majority of souls do not ascend. The Tethered, an order of undying champions, has stepped forward to guide and protect humanity. The earlier Tethered chose humanity over celestials, fiends, and worldly motivations, and strove to ensure that the people of Aeternum could live long enough to find a way for their souls to ascend. On the streets of Aeternum, the tethered stories are told. Heroic tragedies play out in brutal fashion, unacknowledged by the people the tethered are sworn to protect. The flash of black powder, the gleam of blades in the moonlight, accentuate their struggle. Death is little more than an inconvenience to them, but each defeat carries a measurable cost in human souls. Okay. Cool. So if I was to just sum up Fragged Aeternum, from a PC perspective, I would say that PCs are immortal, gothic, horror, superhero underdogs. Okay? So there are these immortal superheroes in terms of power, okay? But very gothic. So, not capes and stuff. We're talking blades and flintlocks and trench coats and big collars and tricorn hats, okay? And a normal person might be, this powerful, and the PCs are this powerful, substantially more. But the things they are fighting are, like, way more powerful than them. Okay, but what sets Fragged Aeternum, I think, apart from a lot of other, we'll call it the insurmountable odd style genre, or typically it's Lovecraftian, where the PCs are just sort of, insignificant, maybe vaguely skilled, but then the things they fight are more like a plot than an actual thing. In Fragged Aeternum, the players are people of substantial influence and power. Maybe not influence. They've got the ability to impact the world quite significantly. Okay? And the things they fight may be massively more powerful than them, but they can stick a sword in it. They can do something. They can stab at it, they can shoot it, they can thwart it. Okay? So they can directly confront it. And so that feels a bit different. Another thing is also, obviously, and this has been mentioned before, Fragged Aeternum is strongly influenced from, Bloodborne and Dark Souls games, but I'm not trying to exactly mimic them. Just inspired from them. If you're wanting an experience that is much more like those, I'd grab Fragged Aeternum, but then also grab my Darkborn PDF. It's a super cheap PDF. You get on Drive-Thru RPG. I can't remember what I gave away for, but it's something really low. And that's just got the rules there if you want to do something much more Bloodborne-y or what have you. Okay, but we're not going to be crossing that. We're going to be dealing with primary Fragged Aeternum. This is also probably a good point to talk about the files that you'll need, or physical books. So, of course, you're going to need the Fragged Aeternum book. So this acts as a setting primer, and it has all of the rules in it. So yeah, and it's got all the stuff in there, or everything you'll need to run a game is just in this. Except for you will need the Fragged Empire core rulebook. It has the core mechanics and just how to make a skill roll, how to make an attack roll, the basic stuff that's very simple to pick up. Fragged Aeternum does use a trimmed down version of the rules. It's still, I will not say it's quote rules light, but it is, in terms of Fragged, it is definitely trimmed down. The other book that you're gonna want to get, and I strongly recommend this one, is my Greyberg Market expansion. So this book delves much more into a specific area. So if we look here, so down here, that's where Greyberg Market is, that tiny little slice. And then, so it's this giant big market area. And it just, so this book zooms into the lore, gives much more sort of a string of specific examples, but it also gives a lot more player and GM guide information. And much of what I'll be covering today will be in this book. So I strongly recommend it. And general advice for any game, and this goes for board games, role-playing games, computer games, or what have you. The best expansions and the supplements are not the ones that come out just after the original is released. I know the hype train is usually at its peak about then, and that's, let's get the next thing. Or all those Kickstarter stretch goal expansions. The best expansions are the ones that come out a year or more later, after the game designers have had a chance to put their product out there, see how the community sort of interacts with it, have time to sort of think over things, and often those expansions they release will be not just more thoughtful, but also just much more accurate in what they're attempting to sort of round out and flesh out their original creation. And that's what this is. So I strongly recommend grabbing these two books. And there's just, this is a great looking book. I highly recommend you grab that. Okay, enough of the pitch. You guys know I'm totally biased. Buy my stuff. Okay, cool. Let's jump into this. Firstly, I think that we should actually dive into one of the most unique things about a Fragged Aeternum is that the players are immortal. Okay, so just jumping onto the character sheet here, you can see their spectral form. Okay, so this is what happens when a player dies. So when a player PC dies, players don't die, PCs die. They you cut their head off, and then they'll turn into this spectral ghost, and they can keep fighting. And they gain +1 armor and crit damage, which is huge. Then they become immune to fear and bleeding. They fly, they're incorporeal. But each turn, they take damage to some random attributes. And this represents them sort of slowly fading away. And also, very importantly, they fully heal the attribute that killed them. So let's say you've just been attacked by a big bad guy, and he, cut your head off by doing understanding damage. 10 crit damage to your understanding, lops your head off. Then that understanding attribute will heal back up to full, and you turn into a spectre. Then you start to fade, of course, after that. Okay, but what this does, and the role that this plays within the Fragged Aeternum combat flow, and this is one of the most unique things, I think, is about the feel of combat in Fragged Aeternum, is the PCs start off sort of here. The NPCs actually start off stronger than the PCs. Okay? You're just doing more damage, got more fancy abilities, okay? But then, as PCs die and turn into spectres, they will gain power. And then they will have the edge over the NPCs. But they must be careful, because they're slowly fading, and so therefore it's now a rush. And so you end up with this sort of tempo shifts as the combat's going along, and I find that really fun. Unlike a classic role-playing game where you sort of, okay, you both start off and then you just sort of shoot and stab and throw arrows at each other, and you might be slowly dwindling in resources a little bit, and then eventually the fight sort of, ends. Okay, just suddenly the hit points are out. Fragged Aeternum, very different. It's kind of like, okay, they're winning and now we're winning, but now we're in a rush, and it's sort of, and it can end quite quickly too. So just because crit damages are higher and people die easier and stuff like that in there, so it's just a little bit more brutal. And this plays into, I would say, the part about Fragged Aeternum that I find most exciting as a GM, and why I love to GM Fragged Aeternum. I would sum it up as saying it's a liberating game to GM. So one of the golden rules of Fragged Aeternum is for GMs to not hold back. As GMs, we can often be tempted to curb our NPCs' actions to make them a little less lethal. You're like, oh, okay, they decide to target the tank rather than the healer or something like that. Not in Fragged Aeternum. Fragged Aeternum, you are told as a GM, go nuts. Okay, if you've got the kill shot on the player, take it. Do like the most preposterous, horrible, powerful NPCs that you can imagine. Build them, okay? And go ham on your players. And it's designed to be played that way because players don't feel like it's not this crushing thing when they get hurt or their character dies or something like that. It's kind of, but then it shifts because it gives them more abilities, so therefore the players feel like they kind of get this additional reward or thing back for them. Okay? But not only from the joy of killing PCs, I find it also liberating from a narrative point of view, just because it's set in this endless city that's not only goes on forever, it's also built upon the ruins of endless city beneath it, and it just opens up so many opportunities of what could be out there, what the players could do, the sort of quests they can do. Also, all of the players can perform magic skill rolls, and magic skill rolls are they're kind of this narrative focused mechanic where the player says, I wish to do this, I'm drawing upon this power source, and then the GM says, okay, well then you need to make this roll and you're required to do these things. And so it's sort of this creativity is encouraged not only for GMs to come up with stuff, but also the players can get really creative because they can attempt to do anything. Of course, there's limitations and guidance and structures to this. Yeah, cool. Anyway, I find Fragged Aeternum just a very, very, very fun game to GM. Cool. Okay, so let's dive into some of the more specifics as well. Firstly, let's go NPC types. Okay. Oh, no, wait. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Cool. I'm just checking my list. Okay. So NPC types. Okay. So if you're familiar with Frag, a lot of this will sort of sink in, but there's little differences here. Okay. So you've got your henchman groups, skilled NPCs, power groups, and immense NPC. So henchman group are your mooks. Okay? They're like a squad of guys. Generally, they take one hit to take down. Their threat is in their numbers, but you can sort of curb their damage quite heavily by knocking out the bodies. Okay? But if the PCs don't deal with them, they can deal a lot of damage. Okay? The next one here, this is unique to Aeternum, is your power group. So they function a little bit like henchmen in that they are a squad or a group. Okay, but unlike henchmen, these represent some sort of attack or force within the battlefield. So like a fireball flying through the air, or tentacles bursting out of the ground and slapping at things. Or you could probably do tentacles as henchmen as well. But it's basically power group will generate a certain amount of bodies per turn. They appear, they usually they might linger for a turn, and then they'll make an attack or something like that. And the reason why they're not just a dice roll or an effect and a thing that you put on the battle map is because the players can attack them and they can move around them. And it's just like, okay, you know, if giant fireball is forming and then it launches towards the enemy, you could like shoot it out of the air, or the tentacle bursts out of the ground, you slice it up before it attacks you. But if you don't deal with them, then slowly they might just build in too much power. And this power group also lends itself to Fragged Aeternum being, it's kind of a boss fight game. It's, by the rules, it's not designed to necessarily just be a boss fight game, but it does lend itself in that direction. So we'll get to that. Okay. Skilled NPCs, so these are equal in power to one player character, and this represents just the players coming across someone who is of equal competence, you know, like an assassin, or, you know, maybe some master, like a archmage or something like that, you know. Someone's quite competent, good, can do some damage. Okay, and you can also see here, and this is a bit of a hint to show you how the NPCs start off just more powerful than PCs. So they deal by default +1 endurance and crit damage. So, and they get additional endurance, okay? But of course they don't turn into specters. Unless they've got a specific variation, because you can have tethered fighting tethered. A tethered is one of the PCs, by the way. Okay, then the last one here is probably the feature. Okay, so this is the immense NPC. So equal in power to 4 player characters, and this is your boss. This is your big, giant baddie, and they do, you know, 3 actions per turn. They deal +2 crit damage by default. These are nasty, nasty things. Okay, and generally the way I like to structure my fights is I'll probably have an immense NPC. If I've got 5 PCs, which I often do, I might chuck in a mook or a, you know, henchman or a power group or something like that. Or if you want to do like a squad fight, you might do a couple of skilled NPCs and then a couple of henchmen mixed in there. Cool. Anyway, so it's a fairly typical Fragged structure. Sorry if you can hear the truck from the road. Cool. Okay, so let's dive on from here. Let's look at NPC natures. Okay, so in the core rulebook, at the back where you got all the lists, is you've got all of the PC natures that you can do. But I recommend you have a look at the Greyberg book, okay, where it dives into these in just a little more detail, talking about the different natures. So natures in Fragged are not a thing. They're kind of a narrative category. So all PCs have a nature, okay? So in Fragged Empire, this would have been your species, but in this one, this is your, I can't think of a better word than nature, okay? So let's walk through these one by one, and this gives you some advice of sort of stuff you can do. So, okay, so apex predators. So these are the guys, one of their feature ability is you do a target prey. So you sort of select your opponent within a fight, and then you can get bonuses for taking down that one person. So the sort of person that could be an apex predator is, you think, an assassin or a big game hunter, a bounty hunter, or some sort of, you know, honorable knight who likes to challenge people to duels, or a marksman or something like that. Okay, so these are they're designed to be the boss killers, okay, in a way. Select their target, go at it. Okay, the next one here is your beast. So the beast's thing is that during combat, once they're in combat, they can kind of go beast mode, where they get a massive momentum points, and they kind of get this big boost of power. So this is a type of person that could be there is like a berserker barbarian, a werewolf, or some sort of, a protective parent, and oh my goodness, my children are under threat. So, anyway, so it's kind of that big burst of oomph. Okay, the next one here is your deranged character. So this one deals a little bit more with madness, and their big thing, the big thing that they've got is that they allow rerolls. So a little bit more of a skilled focused character, or a person that's good at that sort of key moment. So let's say they make the vital attack roll with all their momentum spent on boosting it. They can ensure it's going to hit. And so this could be, your ancient tethered, or your insane soothsayer, or your mad scientist, or possessed priest or prophet. Sort of got this mad insight, and just sometimes it's true, but usually it's not, sort of thing. Okay, the next one here is Martyr. So this was a favorite nature of one of my players. So the big thing for them is that they become more powerful when they're a Spectre. So not only do they fade slower, but they deal an additional crit damage when they're a Spectre. And so you actually, this is a very fun character. So this is the sort of PC who wants to die. They will run to the front and they're like, kill me, as they're slashing at the enemy. And because when they die, they become even more powerful as a Spectre. And this could be like, the Mad Bomber, or the Sacrificial Knight, or the Vengeful Widow, or something, or the Vengeful Widower, or, that sort of a character. Cool. Okay. The next one here is your Overlord. So Overlords have minions. Okay, so this could be, your Clockwork Soldier Smiths, who's making little wind-up warriors, or your Golem Crafter, or your Hound Master with your tethered dogs, or Necromancer who summons skeletons, or a Warlock who can create imps, or what have you. Okay, the next one is your Pious character. So this is a little bit of a simpler option. So these guys gain a boost to suspense rolls. We'll get to that later. And the big thing is that they gain an additional resource. So they can just get stronger gear. And of course, all of these natures come with a set of unique traits that only they can take too. So it's not just like, so Pious will have a bunch of different options that can boost them. And this is, so you could be like a holy knight, or you're a loyal soldier, or a monk, or maybe you're a political activist. You've got some core belief that is driving you forward. Cool. Okay. And the thing that you're attached to could be good or evil, or it could be, like I think I had like a Marxist revolutionary player once in one of my games, and he was pious for that. He was handing out political pamphlets all the time, and he used a hammer. It was kind of funny and cheesy, but I liked it. Yeah, I want to talk more about the story for that character, but anyway, we'll push forward. The next one is Ravenous. So this is the character that their big thing is that they can eat things and they heal from it, okay? And they gain a boost. So this could be your antiquarian, the person who's like, I must collect all the artifacts. Could be a drunkard, so you're a big guy with your big barrel, and you're drinking beer, and or it could be like a ghoul or a vampire. It's a more of a classic thing that might spring to people's heads. You hunger for a particular substance. So they're a bit tankier. Okay, next one is Shrewd. So another one that's slightly simpler. This one, their big thing is that they can give you a couple of free actions, or a dodge, or a get ready action per combat. And this could be like the aristocratic fop, the gunslinger, the merchant, a ninja, or a thief, or a swashbuckler. Much more skill orientated. character. Then the last two you've got the Thaumaturge. This is your typical bit more of a mage type character, in that they get to, when you doing some attack rolls, you place down dangerous terrain, like you're doing a fireball, so little fires will pop up around you, and often they're placed by the GM, but the Thaumaturge get to actually place them themselves. And so this could be the bomber, it could be a sorcerer, or a wizard, or sewage witch, or something like that. And the thing is, I want to make clear is, if you want to be a mage, you don't have to be a Thaumaturge. You could be different types of mages by taking different things. So let's say you're a mage, but maybe you hunger for mana, so you might take Ravenous, or a mage who's a summoner, so you might be an Overlord, or you're a fire mage who really focuses down one target, so you might take Apex, or let's say you're a mage who powers up, so you might take Beast Mode. Okay? Then the last nature here is Gadgeteer. So this one allows you to make free spare time rolls to create gadgets. This is the person who's really, really loves trinkets and sort of these one-off use items. So this could be an alchemist, an artificer, an inventor, some sort of rune smith, or a techno magi, or a trapper. The sort of person who's making stuff, okay, making these sort of consumables in a way, or these one-use items. So yeah, there's a really cool picture of a gadgeteer, a techno magi. So cool. Anyway, so hopefully that gives you a bit of a glimpse about natures, and the breadth of things they could be. Okay, next one, let's have a look at weapons. So this is going to be very, very briefly here. Okay, so you notice there's a very small list of weapons for Fragged Aeternum. This is because, and typically a character's going to have one weapon, because your resources don't shift a lot. They're actually bound to your level in Fragged Aeternum. You've got, short, balanced, dual, massive, or a shield, melee weapon, and then you got small, dual, heavy. There's also a bombard weapon that comes out with the Greyberg Market book. And a lot of these are a lot of the power has been shifted from the base weapon to the variation. So let's say you take a balanced weapon, okay, and it's melee, and then so you're okay, well, what type of balanced weapon is this? So it could turn into a hammer, or a sword, or a polearm, or maybe it's your tooth and claws, because you're that sort of a bestial character. And down here you got a bunch of modifications. If you want to make it a magic weapon, add one of these arcane options, and then that adds a specific weapon type, and then you've got much more arcane variations that then you can also apply to your weapon. There's more of these in the Greyberg book as well. And then the other thing that I want to touch on, and this is very, very important for GMs, is that NPCs by default should all have a fear weapon. Okay, so you'll notice that. Sorry, let me just zoom in here. So the fear weapon, you'll notice that it costs less resources, okay, and it's NPC only. So a fear weapon it's got a big plus hit, and it's got a big amount of endurance damage, but it does less crit damage, okay. Think about this as the sort of safe attack for the enemy. So let's say the players are fighting a big a cathedral has been turned into animated and turned into a giant rock golem creature. This thing obviously it pummels you with giant 100-ton fists of rock, okay, and smashes you down. So this is going to be obviously it's a big AoE weapon, deals lots of damage, but that's kind of all it's got, okay. So there's going to be some PCs where it will absolutely splat, like the ones who can't get out of the way. But let's say you got a shrewd character who's really good at dodging and maneuvering. You're never going to hit that sucker, okay, with your big fist. So as the GM, you can swing the big fist at the one, maybe it's one attack per turn to represent, sort of show it slow, and you only aim for the ones you got a chance to hit with it. But what you can do against the other characters is use your fear. So it just represents the ambient immensity of this monster, and you make an attack against the PCs who have specific defense versus fear. And you'll often find that the more avoidance-based characters are more vulnerable to fear, whereas the sit there and take it characters are going to be more resistant to fear. And you can wear them down with that. And if you kill them with a fear weapon, then that could represent them having a heart attack or something like that. Because despite the PCs, the tethered, being immortal, they are still mortal humans placed within an immortal body. So they may be immortal, but their body's biology doesn't know this. It can't know this, and it's still going to respond. So all of your NPCs should be having a fear weapon. You're skilled in your immense ones, particularly. And if they don't, then they gain actually a bonus to hit and defense. Okay. And some things won't have a fear weapon. So let's say you're just fighting a really good guard captain. Okay? He's very competent. His abilities are great. But he's not scary. Like, he's not the sort of thing that's going to scare a tethered. So don't give him a fear weapon. But he gains a little boost to offset that. So very important to have a fear weapon. Also keep in mind, fear doesn't work versus specters. Okay, so once the body's dead, then they're not having heart attacks. Cool. Okay, so jumping on from here, let's have a look at Arcane. So, let's jump forward. So this is your magic skill roll. So, all tethered can perform magic rolls. Okay, thaumaturges are the best at it, but with this, so I recommend reading through the Greybook book. Okay, it's going to give a better breakdown of how this works than I can here without spending a lot of time. But I think I can give you a quick overview. So the steps with this is, firstly, the players say, well, I want to perform a magic roll. Okay, so firstly, they describe what they want to do, and they select their skill, and then make the and the difficulty is set by the GM. But one of the most important things they need to do is they need to select where they're drawing from. Okay, so let me just very quickly touch on this. So firstly, they can draw upon the city, Aeternum itself. And this represents them taking it upon themselves to reshape reality. Okay? To reorganize the molecules and the materials and to alter things. Okay? So that's like, if you're starting to mess with that sort of stuff, it can have a lot of chaotic effects. So the benefits of drawing upon this is drawing directly upon Aeternum offers casters the ability to perform magic in a way that is completely within their control, without dependency or manipulation from outside forces, i.e. celestials or fiends. Okay? So if this is going to work, then they're responsible for it in many ways. Okay? But the difficulties is that this can cause damage to themselves or have very chaotic effects if they mess up the roll. Okay? Think about it like it's a high stakes roll. So yes, they make their roll. If they roll well, fantastic. If they roll bad, they're going to be really bad. Okay. The next one here is Celestials. So this is, you're actually effectively praying to the Celestials for aid. Okay, so for divine intervention, effectively. So I'll read here the benefits of this one. So drawing upon the Celestials for arcane power is a very safe option, as Celestial magic is very powerful and effective, and a failed arcane skill roll will not result in harm and may still grant some aid. Celestial's goals and natures are nearly impossible to understand, but a high arcane skill roll may grant some insight into what magic assistance they are given, and why. GMs should use Celestial arcane skill rolls to give hints about the Celestial's goals and personalities. They are an easy way for GMs to give advice and hints to their PCs. Okay? So, and you can read some of the difficulties here. You know, they don't always do what you want. And they're really big on, like, teaching people lessons. So, think about it like, if someone wants a safe option, they can do Celestial stuff, but then maybe the Celestials want to teach them humility, which, you know, is a nearly impossible thing for a player to learn in a role-playing game. Especially, like, because the games are based around a lot of power fantasy stuff, okay? But maybe the Celestials want to do that, so they're trying to humble the PCs. Yeah, that's going to be a point of endless frustration. But it's sort of a chance for the GM to give hints and for some sort of nudging them in the right direction, you know? Sort of pushing the plot along, even if the PCs aren't getting the exact powers they want. Okay, so the next one is the Fiends. So this is actually drawing upon the Fiends, which are the big bad guys. Okay, let's read the benefits. Most Fiends will readily give power to people who hold the potential to further their plans. Many are not intent on causing the immediate and obvious harm of any human who would call on them, as some seek to play the long game. This may allow a cunning caster to safely draw upon their power in small amounts by learning to work around a particular fiend's personality, or to trick, outwit, outmaneuver them. A failed arcane skill roll may result in the fiend still aiding the caster in an attempt to lull them into a false sense of security. But obviously, the big difficulties is you're asking bad things to help you, okay? And they're going to try and manipulate you. And a bit of a hint, fiends may say they're bound by contracts, but they're not. They will lie endlessly and say anything and do anything to get what they want. Okay, and if that means they can start channeling through stuff, and it is a short-sighted fiend who's just out to cause suffering. The sort of fiend that's just like taking pleasure in just hurting people, that's like they're addicted to fast food. Okay, they're just getting that for kicks and giggles. The real fiends, which are the ones who can actually offer some substantial power and impact on a game, they understand the big goals. They want to actually corrupt human souls and drag the tether down and thwart their plans. And they will happily lose a fight to take down 10 humans easy. Okay? Or they will play the long game of a 1,000-year plan to slowly corrupt tethered. Okay? So you can get a bit cunning there. Okay. The next one is we're going to look at suspense rolls. So again, this could be another big thing you could talk through. So this is when sort of out of combat things happen, or just really wacky, wild things happen within the world, and they sort of start messing with people. So I'm going to quickly walk you through some of these. Okay, so the first one here, technically traps are a suspense roll. Okay, so make a skill roll to avoid an arrow trap or something like that, or it shoots you in the knee. That's a thing. But the main draw are these other ones. So let's touch on these other ones. The first one is clarity. Okay, so sudden betrayal, moral conundrums about your mission, necessary evils, and other such attacks on the clarity of your purpose can be incredibly painful. Failing at clarity suspense rolls usually deals damage to a character's conviction. Clarity suspense rolls usually require a resolve skill roll. So this is, you put the moral conundrum in front of the players. Like, let's say there's a fiend threatening to burn down a building with a bunch of kids inside, and if you let the fiend do it, then the fiend will also be trapped there. But then if you rush in to save the building, the fiend might escape. And so, there's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of stuff, or maybe you're doing stuff for the greater good by sacrificing a few. Anything like that really affects a person's conviction to their purpose, get them to make a clarity roll. Okay? Like betrayals and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, there's lots of examples here. I recommend you read it through. The next one is humanity. So this is gore, isolation, and human suffering can turn a person's heart cold. That's terrible typography. Sorry, or writing. Disconnecting them from their humanity as a defense mechanism. So this is passing a humanity suspense roll usually deals damage to a character's empathy. Humanity suspense rolls usually require an insight skill roll. So this one, if something as horrible has happened to a person, you get them to make an insight roll, and if they understand the harm that's being caused by their actions, that can hurt a person. It starts stabbing at their empathy. So it's kind of, you're getting damaged the more aware you are on this one. And that's a big thing with suspense rolls, is sometimes they hurt you whether you pass or fail them. You want to fail some rolls. If you are a person who is super observant and super understanding in Fragged Aeternum, then that could mean you start spotting all of the horrible things, and you start understanding the true magnitude of the suffering that your foes are causing, or the impacts of your actions, and that can actually hurt you by doing that. Okay? But then, of course, if you're a person who's not particularly convicted by your plan, you will lack the ability to push through all of these trials and tests. Okay? The next one here is reality. So, when otherworldly horrors, magic, great scientific feats, and supernatural forces mess with a person's sense of reality, especially a deeply ingrained sense, a person's mind has two choices: bend or break. Passing a reality suspense roll usually deals damage to a character's understanding. Reality suspense rolls usually require an awareness or city skill roll to know about something. So this is when they start coming across stuff that's impossible. The staircase that you leave the top and you come out the bottom, or something twisting in and out of magic, sort of warping reality, or you get the impossibly bottomless pit and stuff like that. Then that's like, it's wrong. This stuff scientifically cannot exist, and that starts, your mind either bends or breaks. And so require reality rolls for this one here. Cool. Okay, so we won't deal super into corruption and madness, which is the final thing I want to touch on. So these are two things that can happen to, these will slowly happen to a player. Through some of their choices, various things can apply this to them. And they're very hard to remove. And they represent the slow decline of a PC tethered. Okay? So if they get really, really old, just slowly, they get a little bit cold. So they become a little bit, that counts as corruption. Or madness, or maybe they're just a bit too much magic or fiendish stuff running through them, and so their nature is shifting. So anyway, this again, in the Greybook book, dives into much more sort of examples of this and how this can affect your role playing. Cool. Okay, so that pretty much covers it up. I know I lightly touched on a lot of things, and I effectively told you go get the Greybook book. Hopefully that covers everything. If you guys have specific questions, ask in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer. And again, I really encourage you as GMs, really have fun with Fragged Aeternum. Just go all in. Go all in. Crazy plots. Splat your PCs all over the ground. It's a lot of joy. I really enjoy GMing Fragged Aeternum.